Hi, welcome back to Nobody's Doing It Right. For today's episode, we're going to talk about how and why you should risk losing them. Risk losing them. Risk being your authentic self, showing up as you would authentically in alignment with who you are, with what you want to experience in this world, and risk losing the people that are not aligned with that. I think a lot of us who identify as people pleasers, who maybe have anxious attachment, who need validation from other people a lot. Of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting validation from people, but when you hinge on it, you hinge your whole self-worth on somebody else's validation of you. That can be a bit problematic and unhealthy. Those of us who identify with those things feel like we have to act a certain way. We have to be a certain version of ourselves, be right in order to keep people in our lives. We don't want to lose these people. We don't want to lose the way they see us, right? We don't want to change their perception of us, and we don't want them to leave us. We don't want to experience that abandonment. But at the end of the day, if you are acting in ways that are inauthentic to you, are not in alignment with who you are and what you want to experience, you're abandoning yourself. You are losing yourself. So there is a sacrifice, there is a risk, no matter which decision you make. So I would say, of course, this is easier said than done, that you are better off risking losing them. And of course, I don't mean to go out of your way to hurt people, to do things purposefully mean or rude or anything against your values or your morals, right? I'm talking about truly being authentic and aligned with who you are, how you want to be, the level of respect you want to have for people, for yourself, for everything, right? If doing all of that means that this person in your life right now, whether that's a romantic partner, a friend, a family member, whatever, leaves, then that's a good thing. Then you should want that, actually. It weeds out the people that are not aligned with the version of you need to become for yourself. Because you know what? You could decide to just not do the things you want to do, right? You could decide to not grow and blossom into the kind of person that you know is most aligned with you. You could. You could stay exactly as you are to maintain a relationship with somebody. A romantic one, platonic, familial, whatever. You could stay exactly as you are to maintain that. And that won't feel satisfying in the long run. You will always feel like you are chipping away at yourself in order to keep them. And then if you do that, right, for them, you don't show up the way you want to, you don't act the way you want to act, you don't want to step into the opportunities you want to step into to maintain them in your life. When they don't respond in ways that you want them to, or they don't act or show up the ways you want them to, you will always feel dissatisfied. You will always feel resentful because in your mind, you'll think, well, I am doing all this to keep you here and you're doing none of it. You're doing nothing. You're not going against any of your needs and desires. Obviously, that's not their responsibility. If you are holding yourself back or whittling yourself down to nothing to maintain them, that's your responsibility. And I'm not trying to absolve them of any responsibility they have of showing up well in a relationship, of course. But that is something that you dictate. You dictate how you show up for yourself, and then you don't put that pressure on another person to have to accommodate for the ways in which you're lacking in the way you show up for yourself, right? You don't put it on them to compensate for that lack within yourself. When you give it to yourself, when you have it within you, when you are showing up authentically, you feel in alignment and attuned with yourself. You don't have to rely on anyone else to give that to you. You don't need it desperately to feel okay. You can have it. It's enjoyable to have, of course, and we are communal creatures, so we do need each other, right? But you don't have to hinge or attach to a specific person. You don't need it from them specifically because you can find it within yourself. So it allows you to be a lot more mindful of the kind of people you want to actually have in your life so that you can experience those things with other people. You can be more aware, you can be more picky about the people you bring into your life. So in order to do that, you have to risk losing them, whoever them is in your mind, whoever it is that's making you feel, or maybe you have this belief in your mind that if you act the way you want to act, they will leave. You have to risk losing them, because if not, you're going to end up losing yourself. And when you lose yourself, that is a much harder process to regain that clarity and awareness of who you are and to deal with that abandonment than it is with somebody who's not even aligned with you, who's not meant to be in your life anymore. And this isn't me saying that you should just discard people and just let them go and move on. And of course, it is a tough process to shift away from certain people that you might have had in your life forever. There's a lot of grief involved in that. I think the only thing that can help you process that grief or work through it or become resilient to it in a sense is understanding that even though you're experiencing that grief, even though you're having to let go of somebody, you have yourself. You have at least not abandoned yourself. That makes the process much easier in the long run. So I think it's really important that all of us remember that it's better to risk a relationship with somebody that we feel like we can't be ourselves around than risk the relationship with ourselves. And you know what? Sometimes we think that, oh, by being me, by being who I am, being authentic, it's going to risk this person leaving my life, whatever. We think that, but that's not actually the case. That's not what ends up happening. What ends up happening sometimes is, okay, yeah, maybe you risk a certain type of dynamic that you are familiar with, that has always been the way you showed up with each other, but now it's shifted to a different dynamic because you've shifted. It doesn't mean you've lost them. You've lost a way to interact with them. You don't engage with them in the same exact way, but now your relationship has shifted. And sometimes these relationships get deeper and more intimate and more vulnerable than they were before. So if we look at it from that perspective, to not risk losing them is actually doing yourself and them a disservice because you're not showing up authentically for you and you're not showing up authentically for them, to allow them to also experience a deep, vulnerable, authentic connection with their friend or their partner or their daughter or son, whatever. So you're doing no one a good service by holding yourself back, by putting yourself in a box, by chipping away at yourself. So then who ultimately is benefiting? Nobody. So if nobody's benefiting from that, why are we doing it? Right? This is how my brain works. This is how I manage to reframe things for myself. I truly have to ask myself, okay, who's actually benefiting from this right now? And if I'm not benefiting from it, and they're not benefiting from it, then why am I doing it? In another case, if I'm not benefiting from it, right, but say someone else is benefiting from it, but they're not using that benefit to also then, benefit me in return, right? There's no interconnectedness here in this relationship, right? There's no give and take. There's no symbiotic relationship here. Then again, why am I doing this? Why is this happening? If I'm chipping away at myself, I'm ruining my relationship with myself and still not maintaining a connection that is actually helping me thrive. Because that is the point of connections too, right? They are meant to help us thrive in certain ways. Yes, there will always be sacrifices. You do have to compromise, of course. But at the same time, if you're only ever compromising yourself with nothing to show for it in your own way, in a way that feels good for you, because you're allowed to feel good in your life, you're allowed to feel pleasure and enjoyment with the connections you have, then why are you doing it? And it's a really important question to ask yourself. Why are you doing it? Be honest with yourself. Sometimes it's purely that I need to feel valid. I need to feel good enough, and I feel like I can only feel that way with this person and not losing them. If that's the truth, then it's really important to ask yourself, again, what's more worth it here? The way I feel about myself, the way I'm showing up for myself, or simply getting that validation from them, which obviously dwindles over time. That validation does not withstand, a lifetime, because it's surface level, it's fickle, it's hollow. It does not help you maintain your relationship with yourself. And sometimes, again, makes you actually ruin your relationship with yourself because you realize you are basically doing things that are not who you want to be just to get a morsel of validation from somebody else, just to keep them there, to prove to yourself, see, they want to be here because I'm valuable to them in some way. That's not fair to you. And again, like I said, it's not fair to them. So if it's not fair to anybody, what are we doing here? Right? Risk losing them. The kindest thing you can do for yourself and for another person is to risk losing them. That's the irony of it, right? If you risk losing somebody because you are showing up authentically, naturally, intuitively for yourself, you are telling yourself and you're telling them, in a way that you believe everybody is capable of adjusting, of handling it, of being able to deal with this shifting, that you think they are capable of doing it. If you hold yourself back from being authentically you because you worry they're not going to be able to handle it, they're going to leave me, it's kind of disrespectful to them too, right? You're saying basically that you don't think they can handle it. You don't think they're capable of it, that they're not strong enough for it, that they're going to have to run away. And that comes down to this belief that we, as people pleasers maybe, are the ones that have all the power. We are the one that has to manage everything and manage how everyone's feeling all the time. And we have the power and control. We don't. And that's a good thing. The only thing you have power and control over is how you show up. And you are better off making the way you show up authentic and aligned with you so that you at least feel good. And then if you feel good, you can help other people feel good too, right? It kind of has a ripple effect that way. But if you're showing up thinking that, oh, I have all the power, I have to make sure everyone feels okay, and in order for them to feel okay, I have to be a certain way, again, you're just doing that because it's what you think you have to do, or that person's made you feel that way, which is not good. And so to risk losing them means weeding out the people that are not good for you, that are not right for you. So at the end of the day, it is better for you, for them, for everybody if you were to risk losing them and let them show you if they are going to leave, and let yourself show yourself that you can handle it if they do, because you can. You will be okay, especially when you know you have your back, especially when you know you haven't abandoned yourself, that you can trust yourself. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it's informative. If you want to talk with me one-to-one about these things, feel free to book a call over on my website. I also write about these topics on my Substack, and you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok to see the rest of my content. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.